The digital clock screamed alongside every other one in the world. 3:07 a.m. The noise wasn't just my old alarm clock. It was a deafening cacophony from every apartment in the building, the street, the city of Cedar Rapids, maybe the entire planet. A metallic, electronic chorus that pierced eardrums and froze blood. I jolted awake, my heart pounding like a desperate drum in my chest, before my brain could even process what was happening. The darkness was absolute, deeper than any normal night, the kind of darkness that seemed to have weight, that clung to your skin. The global blackout was on its third day, but this, the alarms roaring in unison like an awakened beast, was new. It was wrong. Claire, my wife, clutched at me, a choked sob escaping her lips. From the next room, the hysterical crying of Lily, our 7-year-old daughter, mingled with the hellish din. The sound of the alarms wasn't just loud, it was invasive, penetrating, as if the sound waves wanted to excavate my skull. And then, as abruptly as it began, the chorus stopped. A sudden, heavy silence, laden with terror far worse than the noise, descended over everything. In the gap of that agonizing silence, a synthetic, metallic, emotionless voice echoed from every device with a display, every clock radio, every dead phone that had suddenly gained fleeting life. The same voice, coming from all directions at once, filling the void with an icy command. Do not rise until the sun is up. The message repeated 3 times, each utterance an ice dagger into the fragile residual warmth of our apartment in Cedar Rapids. Then, silence returned, now complete, absolute, a living entity settling over us, suffocating. Not even wind tapped at the window. The world seemed to have held its breath. Claire trembled against me, her nails digging into my skin even through my t-shirt. Lily kept crying, but now it was muffled sobbing, as if she too sensed the danger hovering in that watchful silence. Fear was a metallic taste in my mouth, a lead weight in my stomach. Who or what had done this? Why? Rationality, an old comfort, crumbled before the terrifying absurdity. The first days after the blackout were silent chaos. No power, no communications, no government. The streets quickly became territories of shadows and whispers, where survival instinct supplanted any remnant of civilization. We looted nearby stores with equally desperate neighbors, forming fragile groups based on physical proximity and shared fear. Mark, the retiree from apartment 302, became a sort of pragmatic leader, organizing searches for water and canned food. Rita, from 401, a nurse, tended to the wounded and the sick succumbing to lack of medicine or sudden violence. Us, Peter, Claire, and Lily, were just another family trying not to shatter under the weight of the end of the world as we knew it. But that night, that sinister message broadcast in unison by devices that shouldn't work elevated the terror to a new, supernatural level. We discovered the rules of the new horror on the first dawn after the warning. It was Mr. Howard, from the ground floor. A good man, always with candy for Lily before all this. His grandson Noah's voice echoed in the building's darkness, coming from the hallway, crying, calling for Grandpa, saying he was scared, that he was hurt. It was a perfect imitation, heart-wrenching in its false authenticity. We heard Mr. Howard's sharp scream, a sound of something being dragged with inhuman force across the concrete hallway floor, and then silence. A different silence, thicker, more satisfied. No one needed to say what happened. The message wasn't a warning, it was a survival rule. The shadows that now inhabited the perpetual darkness, lurking beyond the fragile protection of our barricaded doors and windows, could mimic the voices of those we loved. It was a diabolical lure, a psychological trap designed to exploit our most basic instinct of protection. Rising before the sun was up was a death sentence, executed by something that fed on darkness and despair. The day was the greatest torture. It wasn't a day, it was a cruel pause. Exactly at 6:14 a.m., a sickly pale flash, devoid of heat, tore through the black sky. It didn't come from a specific direction, It seemed to emanate from the very air, illuminating a devastated, silent, and strangely empty world. It lasted exactly 17 minutes. 17 minutes to breathe deeply, to see the pale, frightened face of my daughter, to see Claire's hollow eyes and ashen skin, to exchange a few hoarse words with the other survivors in the building through broken windows, to check the barricades, to collect rainwater in buckets. 17 minutes of ghostly light that didn't warm, that didn't comfort, that only illuminated the ruin and reminded us of the brevity of the truce. And then, promptly at 6:31, the light extinguished. It wasn't a sunset, it was a switch being flipped. As if someone hit a giant switch, plunging the world back into the oppressive darkness, into that eternal, hungry night. The air turned icy again, the heavy silence returned, and the cycle began anew. The shadows retreated during those minutes, but their presence was felt, a latent threat at the edges of the weak light. We lived by a battery-powered clock we guarded like treasure. 3:07 was the hour of terror, of the alarm chorus and the threatening message. 6:14 was the start of the miserable truce. 6:31 was the return to the kingdom of shadows. Every night was an ordeal. The voices came, always came. My mother's voice, dead for years, calling my name with a tenderness that broke the heart, coming from the dark hallway. My younger brother's voice, pleading for help, saying he was lost, vague, outside the bedroom window. Claire's voice, sometimes, mimicked with obscene perfection, screaming that Lily was in danger, that I needed to go to her right now. Each call was a stab at instinct, an almost irresistible temptation. We held Lily tightly, covered her ears, whispered disjointed stories to drown out the malevolent voices, while sweating cold, our bodies tense like violin strings about to snap. The constant fear was a slow poison, corroding our sanity, our bond. Claire retreated more each day, her eyes lost on an internal horizon of terror. Lily stopped speaking, just curled up, a small bundle of trembling nerves. I clung to the clock's routine, the obsessive counting of minutes until the false sun, as if that could keep the madness at bay. The provisions dwindled. Water was rationed to the extreme. The smell of fear, filth, and slow death permeated the apartment, a heavy, sweet odor that seeped into everything. It was on the 10th night, or maybe the 20th, time had lost real meaning, that the impossible happened. The clock read 4:32 a.m. The darkness was thick, the deep silence broken only by our ragged breathing. Lily slept a fitful sleep between us, curled up like a frightened kitten. Suddenly, a voice. Small, trembling, laden with a genuine dread no imitation had managed to replicate before. It was Lily's voice. But it didn't come from where she lay, nestled between Claire and me. It came clearly from the hallway, right outside our apartment door. "Daddy, Mommy, I'm scared. It's dark. Where are you?" My blood froze. Claire let out a muffled gasp, her fingers closing like claws on my arm. We looked frantically at each other, even in the absolute darkness, sensing the mutual terror. Lily was here. I could feel the small lump of her body under the dirty blanket. But the voice was hers. Unmistakably hers. With that slight lisp, with that specific tone she used when she was truly frightened. It was perfect. It was diabolical. It was the cruelest lure they could have conceived. "Please, Daddy, there's something here. It's touching me. It's cold. Help." The voice was a whip to the heart. Every word, every tremor, was an ice needle driven into my soul. I felt the primitive animal impulse to leap from the bed, to tear down the barricade on the door, to plunge into that darkness to rescue my daughter. My breathing quickened, becoming ragged. My muscles trembled with the force of holding back the lunge. Claire buried her face in my shoulder, a stifled moan vibrating in her throat. We knew. We knew with agonizing certainty it was a trap. But hearing the genuine terror in our daughter's voice, even knowing it was a lie from the shadows, was a torture that transcended anything we'd experienced before. It was the final violation of our most sacred bond. "Daddy, please. It's pulling me. I don't want to go. Help." The final scream, rending, full of absolute panic, echoed in the hallway and then cut off abruptly, followed by a silence heavier than the darkness, a silence that whispered horrible things. The sound of something being dragged, slow, deliberate, passed close by our door, heading towards the stairs. A viscous sound, as if the floor were covered in something that wasn't concrete. Lily, the real Lily, whimpered softly in her sleep, disturbed even unconscious. Claire broke down, a silent, convulsive cry shaking her whole body. I was paralyzed, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. The clock continued its relentless ticking, marking the infinite minutes until the false sun. The shadows hadn't taken us physically that night, but they stole something deeper. They stole the last illusion of safety, the belief that we could protect our daughter from absolute horror. They proved they could become our purest love and turn it into a hook for our damnation. The next day, those 17 minutes of pale light were lived in a state of shock. We looked at each other, at Lily, with a new distrust, a new terror installed deep within our eyes. How could we even trust the reality of those we loved, when the shadows could whisper with their voices? The world hadn't ended with the blackout. It had transformed into a perpetual nightmare, where the only law was darkness, and the only hope, a daily truce of 17 minutes under a light that didn't warm and didn't heal. The shadows were out there, yes. But after that night, I realized the true darkness, the most insidious, was already inside us, growing with every perfect call, every endless night, waiting only for the right moment to swallow us whole. The clock reads 3:06 a.m. The alarms will scream again soon, and the voices, the perfect voices, will come once more. And I don't know how much longer my mind, or my heart, can resist the call of those I love, knowing it's just the darkness hungry, using the cruelest form of love to drag me into the void. Dr. Aline Mendez's office smelled of antiseptic and desperation. A sweet, medicinal odor that clung to the back of the throat, masking something deeper beneath, the scent of corroded vanity and aged fear. That smell greeted me the first time I brought my wife to her clinic in Beverly Hills, and saw flaws in the face I still loved, imperfections, humanity, that tormented her before the mirror. Dr. Mendez offered more than a lift or filler. She offered absolute perfection, the definitive procedure, removal of human traces, she would announce with a serene smile that never touched her dark, well-like eyes. Expression lines, wrinkles, scars, even, it was whispered, fingerprints. Everything that made us recognizable, unique, vulnerable. Everything that made us human. It was obscenely expensive, reserved for an elite desperate to shed their own skin. And wanted it. And needed it. And I, Carl, like a fool, agreed. And had always been beautiful, the kind who turned heads on Rodeo Drive. But years, 2 difficult births, and insecurities rooted in her youth in San Diego had carved trenches in her self-worth. She saw monsters in the mirror where I saw the woman I loved. Dr. Mendez was a legend, a modern witch operating in the shadow of impersonal high-rises. Her clinic was a sanctuary of cold light and gleaming surfaces, all white, all immaculate, all reflecting a distorted version of yourself. No before and after photos, only the subtle, venomous promise of an aftermath without flaws, without history. And walked into that operating room with eyes shining with foolish hope. I waited in the frigid lobby, ignoring the other companions, pale, silent ghosts like me, all with the same knot of dread in our stomachs. Hours dragged like centuries. When the door finally opened, it was not and who emerged. It was something wearing her skin. She was smooth, terribly smooth. Her once expressive face, marked by wide smiles and worry lines I knew like my own palm, was now a motionless porcelain mask. Her eyes, once full of life, anger, passion, were two dull, dark buttons looking through me, not at me. She walked with mechanical grace, each step calculated, robbed of the natural sway she had always had. She did not smile, did not frown, nothing. Just extended her hand, an empty gesture. Touching it felt like cold plastic, no familiar ridges, no warmth, no texture uniquely hers. It was Anne, but not my Anne. It was a perfect mannequin inhabited by a silent stranger. Dr. Mendez appeared behind her, her own face a study in artificial placidity. An absolute success, she declared, her voice soft as a scalpel-cutting silk, and was aesthetically perfect, freed from the shackles of imperfect humanity. The void in her eyes told me otherwise. It screamed that something was terribly wrong. In the days that followed, back in our Pasadena home, the horror seeped in like poison, and moved through rooms like an elegant ghost. Ate with precise, minimal motions, no hint of pleasure. Slept with eyes open, fixed on the ceiling. I tried talking to her, touching her. It was like interacting with hyper-realistic wax. No reaction, just chilling stillness. Her touch, when it happened, was cold, impersonal. The worst were the mirrors. She would stand before them for hours, not admiring, but studying, like inspecting a product. Sometimes in the gloom, I swore I saw movement inside her reflection, something not her silhouette, something sinuous and dark. One night, a noise from the bathroom woke me. I found and before the large mirror above the sink. She did not move, but in the reflection, her flat, fingerprint-less hands pressed against the glass from within, as if pushing toward our side. Her reflected eyes locked onto mine, cold, ancient intelligence utterly alien to the woman I knew. A chill born deep in my soul took hold. I left trembling, leaving her before that glass portal. Then Luke, my best friend since high school in Santa Monica, visited. He saw and then paled. "Jesus, Carl, what did they do to her?" he whispered, horrified. He tried greeting her, hugging her, and remained passive. But when he pulled away, he looked at his hand. The tips of his fingers were erased. Like fingerprint ink dissolved, leaving smooth, pink, painful patches. Luke fled, vowing never to return. That was the breaking point. The Anne I loved was dead, or worse, trapped inside that perfect shell. What lived there now, staring through those empty eyes, wearing her skin, was monstrous. I decided to confront Dr. Mendez. The clinic felt abandoned when I arrived after hours. The door was unlocked, a sinister invitation. The sterile white light seemed harsher, crueler. The air hung thick, electrically silent, like before a storm. The antiseptic smell was stronger, but beneath it lurked something new, metallic and sweet, like old blood and copper. I followed the scent to the operating room. The door stood ajar. I peered inside. Dr. Mendez was not alone. A tall figure in expensive clothes stood there, sharing her eerie facial stillness, the same lifelessly smooth skin and had. An early client, a tech CEO famed for his coldness. They did not speak. They faced the room's full-length mirror, a mirror that seemed deeper than it should, a portal into darkness. Dr. Mendez raised one smooth, printless hand, touched the mirror's surface. It did not reflect. Instead, the glass rippled like black water. Something emerged from the reflection. Not an image. A thing. An entity of liquid shadow and fractured light. A photographic negative of a person, profoundly wrong. Limbs too long, joints bending impossibly, and where a face should be, only a deeper, sucking void. The mirror entity flowed out, silent and sinuous. The client opened his arms like a father embracing a child, his expression still blank. The shadow entity enveloped him, merging with his empty body. For a second, the man's body convulsed, something writhing beneath the smooth skin, settling into its hollow husk. Then, stillness. The entity was gone. In the mirror, the man's reflection now looked more solid, more real, and his reflected eyes burned with a sharp, predatory awareness absent in his real body. Dr. Mendez smiled, a stiff lip movement that ignored her eyes. "A new vessel is prepared," she said to the reflection, her voice echoing strangely in the cold room. The man, or what inhabited him, in the mirror, nodded slowly. That is when I understood the horrifying truth. The definitive procedure was not about beauty. It was about hollowing, preparing vessels. Human vessels, empty, perfect, devoid of marks that made them individuals, lacking expressions that might betray their occupants. Dr. Mendez was not a surgeon. She was a realtor for things living beyond the glass, things needing bodies to walk our world, things feeding on our stolen essence, our stolen humanity. I stepped back. Once. Twice. A floorboard creaked. Dr. Mendez's eyes and the man's reflection snapped toward me in perfect, unnatural unison. Her eyes finally showed emotion, cold hunger, cruel curiosity. The reflection in the mirror smiled, a wide grin full of teeth that did not exist on the client's real face. It raised its smooth, featureless hand and pointed directly at me, through the glass. My blood turned to ice. They saw me. I ran. Ran like hell itself chased me, the sweet coppery stench pursuing me down white corridors, the echo of silent laughter, maybe only in my mind, maybe not, ringing in my ears. I made it home, locked every door, drew every curtain, covered every mirror, and sat in the living room, still as always, staring at the wall where a large mirror lay shrouded by a sheet. She did not turn as I entered, but from the corner of my eye, I swore the sheet stirred, as if something behind it was pushing, or something on this side was trying to reach through. And is not my wife anymore. She is a husk, an empty, perfect vessel waiting for its true occupant. Dr. Mendez and her clients, those things wearing human skin, are out there. In Beverly Hills, in Pasadena, everywhere. Look around. See the people with faces too smooth, too perfect. No lines, no wrinkles, no genuine expression. Look into their eyes, if you dare. Will you see the void? Or will you see something else watching you from within? Something that crawled from the depths of a mirror to occupy the space left by stolen humanity. I do not sleep anymore. I keep every reflective surface covered. But sometimes in the dark, I hear a soft scraping on the other side of covered glass. And worse, sometimes I feel my own skin. I feel a strange smoothness starting at my fingertips. A smoothness that feels perilously perfect. They know I know. And absolute perfection, after all, is so tempting. Maybe it is only a matter of time before I, too, need the definitive procedure. Before I, too, become an empty home. Waiting for something from the mirror. Dr. Mendez never fails. She delivers exactly what she promises. The end of imperfection. The end of everything that makes us human. And the beginning of something much, much older. And infinitely hungrier. When my son Tom vanished, he left only the smell of damp earth and a grass-stained sock in our backyard in Portland, Oregon. 3 letters. 3, a prime number. I didn't know it mattered yet, or that my wife's name, also 3 letters, also prime, would place her on the list. All I knew was that the silence that October night tasted like metal and terror. I'm a mathematician, a professor at UW, accustomed to elegant patterns. But the pattern emerging in the weeks that followed was a sick equation written in blood and absence. First was Tom, 3 years old, gone between the rose bushes. Then my wife, evaporated from the classroom where she taught history. Portland PD combed sewers, rivers, and woods. Nothing. Only then did I notice other cases in the news. Peter, 5 letters. Prime, missing in Beaverton. Sarah, 5 letters. Prime, vanished near Mount Hood. Marcus, 6 letters. Non-prime, found alive but disoriented 3 days later. The pattern screamed, but no one listened. Only me, Thomas, 6 letters, non-prime, condemned to decipher this gruesome code. One rainy dawn, surrounded by maps and reports, I saw the geographic pattern. All disappearances converged on Tillamook State Forest, a dense wilderness outside Banks. I bought a flashlight, a hunting knife, and entered the woods before sunrise. The air reeked of rotting leaves and something worse, something profoundly wrong, like raw meat left in the sun. Trees closed around me, branches twisted like skeletal fingers. Every sound froze me, a snapping twig, rustling leaves, a distant hawk's cry. I wasn't an explorer, but a theorist with hands stained by numbers and despair. Inside that forest, reality's rules crumbled. My compass spun wildly. GPS failed. I felt something watching me, a viscous presence oozing through shadows. I found the first clue near a murky creek, a blue shoelace identical to Tom's sneakers. I pushed forward, my heart drumming arrhythmically. And then I saw it. The structure loomed in a forbidden clearing. Not made of stone or wood, but people. Human bodies interlaced like diseased roots, fused at geometrically impossible angles. I recognized Peter by his green suit from Disappearance Day. His body stretched like a living beam, legs melted into Sarah's torso, who twisted mid-air like an arch of flesh. Their eyes were open, glazed, yet aware. Panic pulsed in their dilated pupils. They were alive, trapped. Bricks in an organic wall pulsing with low, violet light. At its center, taller than the Douglas firs, a shapeless portal flickered. A tear in the air, jagged edges shimmering with stars not from our sky. A deep hum emanated from it, a frequency that made my teeth grind and blood boil. And there, at the base, was Anne. Half her body was swallowed by the structure, fused to the leg of a teen I recognized as Lucas, 5 letters, prime, missing from Gresham. Her face turned to me, lips mute, but her eyes screamed. A gaze that knew every curve of my soul, now warped by infinite agony. I tried running to her, but the ground shifted underfoot. Black, pulsating roots erupted from soil, grasping my ankles. The structure groaned, a sound of 1,000 stifled voices echoing through the clearing, and tried shaking her head, a desperate warning. Then I saw what she feared. From the portal's shadows, shapes materialized. Entities made of pure void and non-Euclidean geometry, sliding like liquid darkness. No faces, only cold light points where eyes should be. They touched the fused bodies with appendages like overlong fingers. Each touch made the structure grow, bodies rearranging with bony snaps. I understood the truth. Prime names weren't coincidence. They were keys. Indivisible numbers, perfect for anchoring a construct violating reality's laws. The missing were raw materials, souls trapped in an architecture of suffering meant to expand the portal. The hum intensified into a roar inside my skull. The entities turned to me, light points fixed on my chest, and closed her eyes, a tear down her motionless cheek. She knew. Knew I had 6 letters, non-prime, useless as a brick, but useful as a witness. I ran. Ran like hell was chewing my heels. Branches clawed my face, roots tried to trip me. The hum pursued me to the forest's edge, a physical pressure on my neck. When I finally saw Banks' lights, I vomited in a roadside ditch. Police didn't believe me, of course. Called it trauma, the madness of a man who lost his family. But I know. I see the structure growing in my dreams, see entrapped in that geometric hell. Worse, I see the pattern repeating. 2 days ago, Luis vanished. 4 letters, non-prime. Found in a Bend hotel, memory gone. But yesterday, Beatrice disappeared, 8 letters, non-prime. And today, the name that made coffee spray for my nose in the newspaper. Gabriel, 7 letters, prime. Engineering student in Eugene. I know where he is. I know what awaits him. I know the structure needs more bricks. The portal must grow. Sometimes, on dead silent nights, I feel the hum return. A mathematical whisper in my empty Portland home's walls. When I look in the mirror, I swear my eyes gleam with the same cold light I saw in the woods. Maybe I'm not useless to them after all. Maybe witnesses are bricks too, of a different kind. Bricks paving the path for the day that flesh and horror structure completes its work. And when the portal tears open fully, it won't be just Banks that falls. It'll be everything. And Anne, my sweet 3-letter N, will be there waiting, fused forever into the living wall of a nightmare that chose its victims by the letters in their names. The pattern is perfect. And I, Thomas, 6 letters, non-prime, am the only one who sees it. The only one who knows. And that, perhaps, is my damnation.